Welcome to Elizabeth's Stories. Here I unravel gripping true tales of betrayal, heartbreak, and family strife. From hidden resentments to shocking deceits, I explore how those we trust most can leave the deepest scars. Hit subscribe and tap the bell for weekly videos where mysteries and truths touch your soul. Share your thoughts and stories in the comments. I read every one. If you're subscribed, let's dive into the tale now. My name is Elena Winters, and at 28, I thought I'd left the shadows of my past buried beneath the weight of years and the life I'd carved out for myself. But some wounds, like ancient relics hidden in forgotten tombs, have a way of resurfacing when you least expect them. 5 years ago, my stepsister Olivia stole something precious from me, a symbol of my independence, my pride, my freedom, and shattered it in a single reckless night. Worse, my father, the man I once trusted to be my anchor, stood by her side, leaving me to pick up the pieces alone. That betrayal changed me, forged me into someone stronger, someone who learned to guard her heart like a fortress. But now, out of the blue, Olivia has returned her voice, crackling through my phone, like a storm breaking on a quiet night, asking for shelter in the very sanctuary I built from the ruins she left behind. The audacity of it sets my nerves on edge, but there's something else. A whisper of something darker, something hidden in her plea that makes me wonder if this is more than just a family drama resurfacing. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all began, to the roots of a story that feels like it was written in the stars, or perhaps in the shadows of something far older. I grew up in Seattle, in a house that always felt a little too big for just me and my dad. My childhood wasn't one of fairy tales, but it had its own kind of magic moments of quiet wonder, like the way the rain would dance on our skylight, or the afternoons I spent sketching imaginary worlds in my notebook. I was a serious child, mature beyond my years, the kind who organized the pantry while my parents worked late shifts to keep our little world spinning. By 15, I knew exactly what I wanted to become: an interior designer, to craft spaces that held stories, spaces that could heal or inspire. I'd spend hours creating mood boards, rearranging my bedroom until it felt like a portal to somewhere else, somewhere safe. There was a spark in me, then a quiet fire that burned with purpose, and I guarded it fiercely. That spark dimmed when my parents' marriage unraveled. Their divorce when I was 15 wasn't a storm of shouting matches or broken dishes, just a slow, quiet drift, like two ships passing in the fog. My mom took a job in Colorado, chasing a new start, and I chose to stay in Seattle with my dad to finish high school. It was just the two of us, and for a while we were a team. He'd cheer at my school events, his pride a steady light in my life, and he'd listen patiently as I rambled about color palettes and spatial flow. He was my rock, the one person I thought would always have my back. But even then, I sensed a fragility in our bond, like a crack in a mirror you don't notice until the light hits it just right. 3 years later, when I was 18 and on the cusp of college, my dad dropped a bombshell that felt like it shifted the very ground beneath me. He was getting remarried. Vanessa, his new fiancée, seemed like she'd stepped out of a storybook, a kindergarten teacher with a smile that could warm a winter's day and a voice that carried a lilt of kindness. I wanted to like her, and I tried. I really did. But with Vanessa came Olivia, her 19-year-old daughter, and that's when the first shadows crept into my life. Olivia was a mystery wrapped in a contradiction. She was a year older than me, but where I was driven, she was untethered, a wild flame flickering in the wind. She'd dropped out of community college after a single semester, her days spent chasing parties and fleeting thrills. Her eyes, a sharp green that seemed to see through you, held a glint of something I couldn't quite place, cunning perhaps, or a hunger for something she couldn't name. When I first met her, I thought I could bridge the gap between us. I wanted to believe in the possibility of a blended family, a new chapter where we could all belong. I cooked lasagna for our first family dinner, setting the table with care, as if the right plates could stitch us together. Vanessa brought wine, and we toasted to new beginnings. Olivia complimented my cooking, her smile disarming, and for a fleeting moment I thought we might be okay. But there was something about Olivia that set my instincts on edge, like the faint hum of a storm gathering on the horizon. She moved through our house like a guest who'd overstayed her welcome, leaving traces of herself everywhere, my clothes borrowed without asking, my leftovers eaten without a word. Small things, but they piled up like stones in a river, redirecting the flow of our lives. What unnerved me most was how quickly she claimed my dad's affection. Within weeks, she was calling him Dad, her voice dripping with a sweetness that felt rehearsed, calculated. She'd spin tales of woe car troubles, broken friendships, empty bank accounts, and he'd open his wallet without question, his eyes softening in a way they never did for me anymore. I tried to be the bigger person. I took Olivia shopping, introduced her to my friends, even helped her research colleges when she hinted at wanting to try again. I shared my textbooks, offered advice on professors, anything to build a bridge. But the more I gave, the more she took, and I began to notice the cracks in her facade. She'd return my clothes, stained leave dishes in the sink, and interrupt my conversations with Dad to show him something urgent on her phone. It was childish, but it worked. He started to see her as the daughter who needed him, the one who made time for him, while I was just the busy one, always studying, always planning, always a step removed. There was something else, too, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Sometimes, late at night, I'd hear her pacing in her room, muttering to herself, her voice low and urgent, like she was arguing with someone who wasn't there. Once I found a strange pendant on the kitchen counter, a silver charm etched with symbols I didn't recognize, its edges worn, as if it had been clutched 1,000 times. When I asked her about it, her face tightened and she snatched it away, muttering something about it being a gift. I brushed it off, but the unease lingered like a shadow that moved when I wasn't looking. As the months passed, my relationship with my dad began to shift, like a painting slowly fading in the sun. He'd compare me to Olivia in ways that cut deeper than I wanted to admit. "Why can't you be more easygoing like Olivia?" he'd say. Or Olivia never complains about this. Each word was a small betrayal, a reminder that I was losing him to someone who'd barely been in our lives a year. Olivia seemed to thrive on this, her presence a subtle challenge, a game I hadn't signed up to play. She'd plan outings with Dad when she knew I had exams, her laughter ringing through the house as I had buried myself in textbooks. It was as if she was carving out a space for herself by pushing me out, and I was too naive, too trusting to see it for what it was. I told myself it was just growing pains that families take time to blend. I ignored the red flags, the way Olivia's eyes lingered on my belongings, the way her stories never quite added up, the way my dad's attention slipped further from me with every passing day. I wanted to believe in the family we could be, in the hope that time would smooth the rough edges. But deep down, I felt it, a prickle of intuition, a warning that something was coming, something that would test me in ways I couldn't yet imagine. The pendant, the pacing, the way Olivia seemed to watch me when she thought I wasn't looking, it all pointed to a secret, a truth hidden just out of reach. And I foolishly thought I could outrun it. Little did I know the real storm was still to come, and it would arrive in the form of a betrayal so profound it would shatter everything I thought I knew about trust, family, and myself. But it would also awaken something inside me, a strength I didn't know I possessed, a fire that would burn brighter than any shadow could dim. The first months of our blended family felt like navigating a house built on shifting sands. I wanted to believe we could be something whole, something real, a family stitched together not just by circumstance, but by choice. So I tried with every fiber of my being to welcome Vanessa and Olivia into my world. I cooked for them, shared my space, my time, my heart, all in the hope that we could forge a bond strong enough to weather the differences between us. But the harder I tried, the more I felt it a creeping sense of wrongness, like a melody played just slightly out of tune. Olivia was at the heart of it, her presence a riddle I couldn't solve, her actions laced with a quiet malice that I was only beginning to see. And my father, the man who'd once been my North Star, was slipping away, drawn into her orbit by a force I didn't yet understand. It started small, the way most betrayals do. I'd find my favorite sweater crumpled in Olivia's room, a faint stain of red wine on the cuff. My carefully labeled leftovers meals I'd planned for the week would vanish from the fridge, replaced by an empty container and no explanation. Once I caught her rifling through my desk, her fingers brushing over my sketchbooks, those sacred pages where I poured my dreams of designing spaces that felt like home. "Just looking," she'd said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, but the way her gaze lingered felt like she was searching for something more than just drawings. I brushed it off, told myself I was being paranoid, but the unease clung to me like damp air after a storm. I doubled down on my efforts to connect with her. I invited her to the mall, hoping a day of shopping might break the ice. I introduced her to my friends watching as she charmed them with her quick wit and easy laughter, her green eyes sparkling like cut emeralds. I even helped her research community college programs when she mentioned almost offhandedly that she might want to try school again. I shared my notes, my textbooks, my hard-earned knowledge about which professors were kind and which were merciless, all in the name of building a bridge. But every gesture seemed to sink into quicksand. My clothes came back damaged. My advice, ignored my efforts, met with a casual indifference that stung more than outright hostility. What unsettled me most wasn't her disregard, it was the pendant. That strange silver charm I'd found on the kitchen counter during those early days kept resurfacing like a talisman that refused to stay hidden. I'd see it dangling from her neck during dinner, catching the light in a way that made my skin prickle. Once, when she left it on the bathroom sink, I picked it up, my fingers tracing the unfamiliar symbols etched into its surface. They weren't just decorative, they felt alive, pulsing faintly under my touch, as if they held a secret meant to stay buried. When I asked her about it again, her reaction was sharper this time, her voice a low hiss. "It's nothing, Elena. Just a trinket. Stop snooping." But the way she snatched it back, clutching it like a lifeline, told me it was anything but nothing. Then there was the pacing. Late at night, when the house was quiet, I'd hear her footsteps in her room above mine, a restless rhythm that seemed to follow no pattern. Sometimes I'd catch fragments of her voice, low, urgent, speaking to someone or something I couldn't see. Not yet. I heard her whisper once, the words drifting through the floorboards like a cold wind. "It's not time." I lay awake, my heart pounding, wondering if I was imagining things or if there was something darker at play, something tied to that pendant, to her restless energy, to the way she seemed to watch me when she thought I wasn't looking. Despite these warning signs, I clung to the idea of family. I wanted my dad to be happy, and if that meant tolerating Olivia's quirks, I was willing to try. I cooked elaborate dinners, like the lasagna that became my signature, hoping the act of breaking bread together might weave us closer. Vanessa was easy to love. Her warmth was genuine, her laughter a balm. But Olivia was a puzzle with missing pieces. She'd compliment my cooking one moment, then leave the table abruptly, her phone buzzing with messages she'd answer in hushed tones. I'd catch her glancing at my dad, her expression unreadable, and I'd wonder what she saw in him that made her cling so tightly so quickly. The shift in my relationship with my dad was the hardest to bear. He'd always been my champion, the one who'd sit through my endless presentations on color theory, who'd drive me to art supply stores and never complain about the cost. But with Olivia in the house, his attention began to drift. She called him Dad within weeks, the word rolling off her tongue with a familiarity that felt forced, almost predatory. She'd spin stories, dramatic tales of broken down cars, lost jobs, friends who'd betrayed her, and he'd listen his wallet opening as easily as his heart. She's had a tough life. He'd say his voice soft with pity, and I'd bite my tongue to keep from asking why her struggles always trumped mine. The comparisons started soon after. "Why can't you be more like Olivia?" he'd say, when I pushed back against her borrowing my things. "She's so easygoing, so open." Easygoing Olivia, who dropped out of college after a semester, who spent her nights at parties and her days sleeping off hangovers. The words cut deeper than I wanted to admit, each one a tiny fracture in the bond I'd thought unbreakable. I'd catch him watching her with a pride I no longer recognized, and it felt like I was losing him to a stranger who'd walked into our lives and claimed him without a fight. Olivia seemed to sense this shift and leaned into it, her actions growing bolder, more deliberate. She'd plan outings with Dad when she knew I had important study sessions, her laughter echoing through the house as I hunched over my textbooks trying to focus. She'd interrupt our rare moments alone, bursting into the room with some urgent distraction, a text, a photo, a story that couldn't wait. It was childish, but it was effective, and I began to see the pattern she was carving out a space for herself by pushing me out bit by bit, like a cuckoo bird nudging another's eggs from the nest. There were moments when I questioned my own perceptions. Was I imagining the malice in her glances, the calculation in her smiles? Was I jealous, as my dad seemed to think? Or was there something real behind the unease that gnawed at me? One night, I found her standing in the backyard, staring at the moon, the pendant glowing faintly against her chest. She didn't notice me at first, her lips moving silently, as if reciting something ancient, something forbidden. When she finally turned and saw me, her expression flickered, not with guilt, but with something colder, like she'd been caught in a ritual she hadn't meant to share. "Couldn't sleep," she said, her voice too casual, and she brushed past me, leaving the air heavy with questions I didn't dare ask. I tried to ignore the signs to focus on my dreams of college, of becoming an interior designer who could create spaces that held magic, that told stories. But the pendant, the pacing, the whispered words, they were pieces of a puzzle I couldn't yet solve. And then there was my dad, slipping further away, his loyalty, shifting to someone who seemed to wield an influence I couldn't comprehend. I told myself it was just the growing pains of a blended family, that time would smooth the edges, that the unease I felt was just my imagination running wild. But deep down, I knew better. There was a storm coming, and it wasn't just about family dynamics. There was something about Olivia, something tied to that pendant, to her restless nights, to the way she seemed to draw my dad into her orbit, that hinted at a deeper, darker truth. I didn't know it then, but I was standing on the edge of a precipice, my world about to be shattered by a betrayal that would test the very core of who I was. And in that shattering, I would find something else, a strength I hadn't yet claimed, a power born from the ashes of trust, broken and rebuilt. The signs were there, flickering in the shadows, warning me to guard my heart. But I was still too young, too hopeful to see them for what they were. The summer after my junior year of college, I bought my first car, a used Toyota Camry, its navy blue paint gleaming under the Seattle sun like a promise of freedom. I named her Bluebell, a nod to the way she seemed to hum with possibility every time I turned the key. She wasn't just a car. She was a testament to my independence, paid for with 2 years of sweat-soaked shifts at a coffee shop and late nights as a teaching assistant in the design department. My dad chipped in $1,000 as a birthday gift, a rare moment of connection that felt like the old days. but the rest was mine, every penny earned, every sacrifice made. I treated Bluebell like a sacred relic, polishing her, until she shone, checking her oil religiously, never letting the gas tank dip below a quarter. She was my escape, my proof that I could build something solid in a world that felt increasingly unsteady. From the moment I drove Bluebell home, Olivia's eyes locked onto her with a hunger that made my stomach twist. Her own car, a rattling hand-me-down from Vanessa, was a clunker that coughed and sputtered, barely reliable enough for her endless nights out. "Elena, can I borrow your car tonight?" She'd ask, her voice sweet but edged with something sharper. Mine's acting up again. Or I've got a date and I want to make a good impression. "Your car's so much nicer." Each time I said no, my refusals polite but firm. I'd seen her drive a reckless, distracted, her phone glowing in her hand as she blew through a red light. That one time I'd reluctantly ridden with her. I knew she drank at parties, her laughter slurred by midnight, and the thought of her behind Bluebell's wheel sent a shiver down my spine. My car was my sanctuary, and I wasn't about to let her taint it. Her requests grew more insistent, her tone shifting from pleading to petulant. "You're so selfish, Elena." She'd snap when I held my ground, her green eyes narrowing like a predator sizing up prey. She'd complain to my dad, her voice carrying through the house, painting me as the unreasonable one, the sister who wouldn't share. My dad's disapproving glances stung, but he never forced the issue, and I clung to that small victory. It was one of the few boundaries I managed to hold in those days, a fragile line drawn in the sand against the tide of Olivia's influence. But there was something else, something that gnawed at me beyond her demands. That pendant of hers, the silver charm etched with strange pulsing symbols, seemed to appear more often when she asked about my car. She'd toy with it, her fingers tracing its edges, her gaze distant as if listening to a voice I couldn't hear. Once I caught her standing by Bluebell in the driveway, not touching it, just staring, the pendant dangling from her neck like a key to some forbidden door. When she saw me, she flinched, her smile quick and false. "Just admiring it," she said, but the way her hand tightened around the pendant told a different story. I couldn't shake the feeling that her obsession with my car wasn't just about convenience. There was something deeper, something tied to the secrets she carried in her restless nights and whispered words. The storm broke on a Friday in July during a family barbecue to celebrate my grandparents' 50th anniversary. Relatives from across the country filled our house with laughter and chatter, the air thick with the smell of grilled meat and summer warmth. I parked Bluebell in the garage, hung her keys on the kitchen hook as always, and threw myself into the festivities, determined to savor the rare joy of family. Olivia was there, flitting between conversations, her charm turned up to full blast. But when she cornered me by the dessert table, her request was the same. "Elena, can I take your car to a party at Jason's lake house? It's like 30 minutes away and my car's acting up again." Her voice was light, but her eyes held that glint, that edge I'd come to dread. "No, Olivia." I said, my tone steady, despite the irritation bubbling inside me. "You know how I feel about lending my car." She rolled her eyes, muttering such a princess before stalking off. I thought that was the end of it. The evening passed in a blur of toasts and old stories, and by 11 I was exhausted, my body heavy from the drive and the weight of keeping up appearances. I went to bed, the hum of the celebration fading as I drifted into sleep, dreaming of open roads and the safety of Bluebell's steady purr. I woke at 8 the next morning, a strange quiet settling over the house. The kitchen was empty, the coffee pot cold. As I reached for Bluebell's keys on the hook, my fingers met empty air. A cold dread coiled in my stomach, sharp and sudden, like a blade slipping between ribs. I rushed to the garage, my heart pounding, and found the space where Bluebell had been empty. The concrete floor stared back at me, a gaping wound in the shape of my car. I ran back inside, my voice trembling as I called out, "Dad, Vanessa, has anyone seen my car?" My dad emerged from his bedroom, his face creased with confusion. "Isn't it in the garage?" "No," I said, panic rising like a tide. "And the keys are gone, too." That's when I noticed Olivia's absence. She wasn't in the house, her room silent, her usual morning chaos. Empty coffee cups, scattered clothes, nowhere to be seen. A terrible certainty took root. I checked my desk drawer where I kept a spare key for emergencies. It was gone, the drawer slightly ajar as if someone had rifled through it in haste. She'd done it. Olivia had gone into my room, violated my space, and stolen my car after I'd explicitly told her no. The betrayal burned, but before I could call her, my phone rang, an unknown number flashing on the screen. My hands shook as I answered. "Hello, is this Elena Winters?" The voice was formal, clipped like a blade cutting through fog. "Yes, this is she. This is Officer Ramirez from the Seattle Police Department. We have your car involved in an accident. The driver, Olivia Thompson, gave us your number as her emergency contact." The world tilted, the floor slipping beneath me. "Is she okay? What happened? Miss Thompson is physically fine, just minor cuts and bruises." However, she was driving under the influence when she collided with another vehicle. "The occupants of the other car have minor injuries and have been taken to the hospital. Your car, I'm sorry to say, has sustained major damage. It's been towed to the city impound lot." I could barely process the words. Olivia had stolen my car. Driven drunk, caused an accident, and hurt people. Blue Bell. My symbol of freedom was gone, reduced to a wreck because of her reckless, selfish choices. But there was something else in the officer's voice, a hesitation, a weight that made me wonder what he wasn't saying. "We need someone to come to the station," he continued. "Miss Thompson is in custody for DUI and unauthorized use of a vehicle." "I'll be right there," I said, my voice mechanical, my mind racing. I turned to my dad, his face pale as I relayed the news. He didn't speak, just grabbed his keys, his knuckles white as we drove to the police station in silence. I kept waiting for him to say something, anything, to acknowledge the violation, to stand up for me. But the silence was louder than any words, heavy with a truth I wasn't ready to face. At the impound lot, I saw Bluebell, or what was left of her. The front end was crushed, the windshield shattered into a spiderweb of cracks, the navy paint scarred and peeling. The mechanic's assessment was brutal, totaled. The cost to repair would exceed her value. I stood there staring at the mangled remains, feeling something inside me break too. This wasn't just about a car. It was about trust, about boundaries, about the life I'd built being torn apart by someone who cared only for herself. But there was something else, something I couldn't ignore. Tucked into the wreckage, caught in the twisted metal of the driver's side door, was a glint of silver. I stepped closer, my breath catching as I recognized it. Olivia's pendant, its symbols glowing faintly even in the harsh light of the impound lot. It hadn't been there when I parked Bluebell, I was certain of it. How had it ended up in the wreckage? And why did it feel like it was watching me? Its pulse a silent accusation. The drive to the police station was a descent into a nightmare. My mind churned with questions, not just about Olivia's actions, but about the pendant, the accident, the strange weight in Officer Ramirez's voice. Had she taken the car just to spite me? Or was there something more? The symbols, the whispers, the way she'd stared at Bluebell, none of it added up, but it all pointed to a truth buried deeper than a simple act of theft. When we arrived, Olivia was waiting in a holding area. Her mascara streaked her eyes red from crying. But there was no pendant around her neck now, and the absence of it felt like a clue I couldn't yet decipher. "Daddy," she sobbed, throwing herself into my dad's arms, her performance so convincing I almost believed it. He held her murmuring comforts, while I stood frozen, the weight of her betrayal sinking deeper. Not once did he mention the car, the drunk driving, or the people she'd hurt. It was as if I didn't exist, as if my loss was a footnote in her drama. "Olivia," I said, my voice cutting through her sobs, "you stole my car after I told you no. You drove drunk. You hurt people. My car is gone." "What do you have to say?" Her tears stopped abruptly, her eyes narrowing. "If you'd just let me borrow it, none of this would have happened." She snapped, her voice sharp with defiance. "I wouldn't have had to sneak the keys while you were sleeping." I stared at her, stunned. She was blaming me for her theft, her recklessness, the wreckage she'd left behind. And my dad, standing beside her, said nothing, his silence a betrayal sharper than any words. But in that moment, something shifted inside me. The spark I'd guarded as a child, the fire I'd thought dimmed, flickered to life. I wasn't just a victim of her actions. I was something more, something stronger. I didn't know it then, but that moment, the sight of Bluebell's wreckage, the glint of that pendant, the sting of my dad's silence, was the crucible where my true power would be forged. As we left the station, Olivia's pendant still burned in my mind, its symbols a riddle I couldn't shake. There was more to this than a stolen car, more than a reckless night. And I was determined to find out what. The air in the police station was thick with the scent of stale coffee and antiseptic, a sterile contrast to the chaos churning inside me. My dad's silence during the drive had been a weight pressing down on my chest, but I clung to a fragile hope that he'd see the truth. Olivia had stolen my car, driven drunk, and shattered my trust, my independence, my Bluebell. Surely he'd stand by me. His daughter, the one who'd worked tirelessly to earn that car, the one who'd never asked him for anything but his belief in her. But as we waited in the station's cold, fluorescent-lit room, that hope began to fray like a thread caught on a jagged edge. The pendant I'd seen in Bluebell's wreckage haunted me, its glowing symbols a riddle that pulsed in the back of my mind, whispering that this was more than just a reckless act. There was something darker at play, something I couldn't yet name. The officer led Olivia out, her blonde hair, disheveled, her mascara, streaked like war paint across her tear-stained face. A small cut marred her forehead, but otherwise she was unharmed, her green eyes darting between us. "Daddy," she cried, her voice breaking, as she threw herself into my dad's arms, her sobs loud and theatrical. He wrapped her in a hug, murmuring, "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe now." The words were a knife twisting in my gut. Safe. What about the people she'd injured? What about my car, my trust, my heart? He didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge the violation, the wreckage she'd left in her wake. It was as if I were invisible, a ghost in my own family. I stood to the side, my hands clenched, the spark inside me, the one I'd felt flicker to life at the impound lot, burning hotter, sharper. "Olivia," I said, my voice cutting through her performance like a blade through silk. "You stole my car after I told you no. You drove drunk. You hurt people. My car is totaled. What do you have to say for yourself?" She pulled back from my dad, her tears drying as if on cue. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment I saw something flicker there. Not guilt, not remorse, but a glint of defiance, cold and calculating like the pendant's glow. "If you'd just let me borrow it like a normal sister, none of this would have happened." She snapped, her voice sharp enough to draw blood. "I wouldn't have had to sneak the keys while you were sleeping." I stared at her, stunned into silence. She was blaming me for her theft, her recklessness, the accident that could have killed someone. The audacity of it was staggering, but what hurt more was my dad's reaction. He sighed a weary sound and said, "Elena, maybe if you'd been more willing to share this, could have been avoided." The words hit like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. "Are you serious right now?" I said. my voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. She stole my car, Dad. She drove drunk. She could have killed someone. That car was mine. I worked for it, paid for it, and now it's gone because of her. He looked at me, his eyes tired but resolute. She made a mistake, Elena. Everyone makes mistakes. She's young. I'm young, too. I shot back the spark inside me, flaring into a flame. And that car wasn't just a thing. It was my freedom, my proof that I could stand on my own. She took that from me, and you're defending her, Vanessa, who'd arrived at the station shortly after us, stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. We understand you're upset about your car, Elena, but the important thing is that Olivia's safe. Cars can be replaced, but family can't. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were minimizing everything: the theft, the drunk driving, the people she'd injured, all to protect Olivia. My car, my boundaries, my pain were just collateral damage in their eyes. So who's going to pay for it? I asked, my voice shaking with barely contained fury. I have insurance, but there's a $1,000 deductible, and my rates will go up because of an accident I didn't cause. How is that fair? My dad cleared his throat, avoiding my gaze. Well, sweetheart, Olivia doesn't have that kind of money right now. We just paid her tuition for the fall semester, so I am supposed to absorb the cost because she stole my car. I interrupted, my voice rising. How is that fair? Life isn't always fair, Elena. He said, his tone patronizing, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. That's what family means. We make sacrifices for each other. Sacrifices. I muttered, my voice low and bitter. Seems like I'm the only one sacrificing here. The drive home was a descent into silence each mile, stretching the chasm between us wider. Olivia sat in the back, her head bowed, but I caught her reflection in the side mirror, her lips twitching almost like a smirk. My dad stared straight ahead, his hands tight on the wheel, and I wondered if he even saw me anymore, or if I'd become a shadow in his eyes, overshadowed by Olivia's drama. That night, the house felt different, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I overheard my dad and Vanessa in the living room, their voices low but urgent, discussing Olivia's legal troubles. We need to get her a good lawyer, Vanessa said. We can't let this ruin her future. My dad agreed, promising to cover whatever costs were necessary to minimize the consequences. Not once did they mention my car, my loss, or the people Olivia had hurt. It was all about her safety, her future, her redemption. I retreated to my room, the weight of their words pressing down on me. I thought my dad might come to me, might see the injustice and make it right. Instead, he knocked softly and sat on the edge of my bed, his expression heavy with disappointment. Elena, I need you to drop this attitude, he said. Olivia feels terrible about what happened. Has she said that I asked, my voice sharp? Because she hasn't apologized to me once. She's going through a lot, he said, his tone pleading. The police are charging her with DUI and unauthorized use of a vehicle. She's facing community service, possible probation, a suspended license. Isn't that punishment enough? Those are legal consequences, I pointed out, my hands trembling. What about personal consequences? What about making things right with me? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I think you need to be the bigger person here, Elena. Olivia looks up to you. You need to set an example of forgiveness. The words were a final blow, shattering the last vestiges of my hope. My father, the man who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd cheered at my graduation, who'd promised to always be there, was choosing Olivia over me. He was asking me to forgive, to forget to bear the cost of her actions, as if my pain didn't matter. In that moment, I saw the truth: he would never stand up for me. In his eyes, Olivia could do no wrong, and I was expected to bend to break to make room for her chaos. But something else stirred inside me, a strength I hadn't known I possessed. It was as if the spark I'd felt at the impound lot had caught fire burning away the girl who'd sought her father's approval at all costs. I wasn't just Elena, the dutiful daughter. I was something more, something forged in the crucible of betrayal. And that pendant, its glowing symbols still vivid in my mind, felt like a key to a mystery I needed to unravel. Why had it been in the wreckage? What was Olivia hiding? And why did I feel deep in my bones that this wasn't just about a car? The weeks that followed were a blur of insurance claims and police reports, each step a reminder of what I'd lost. Olivia's punishment was light community service and a 6-month license suspension, and she wore her consequences like a badge of inconvenience, not remorse. I took out a small loan to cover the deductible and the cost of a replacement car, picking up extra shifts at the coffee shop to make ends meet. Every hour of lost sleep, every dollar scraped together, was a testament to my resilience, but also a reminder of the betrayal that had forced me to rebuild. One night, as I sorted through the insurance paperwork, I found something tucked into the folder, a photograph of Bluebell's wreckage taken at the impound lot. There, caught in the flash of the camera, was the pendant, its symbols glowing faintly against the twisted metal. I hadn't imagined it. I traced the image with my finger, feeling that same strange pulse like a heartbeat from another world. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it was no coincidence. Olivia's actions, her obsession with my car, the pendant's presence, they were pieces of a puzzle, and I was determined to solve it. The final straw came a week later. I overheard Olivia on the phone, her voice light and careless as she laughed with a friend. "I got away with it," she said, her tone gleeful. Daddy fixed everything as usual. There was no remorse, no regret, just a smug certainty that she'd escaped unscathed. I stood frozen in the hallway, my heart pounding, the fire inside me roaring to life. That was the moment I decided I couldn't stay in this house, in this family, where my boundaries were trampled and my pain was ignored. As soon as I graduated, I'd leave far enough to force distance close enough to remind myself why I'd left. But it wasn't just about escape. It was about reclaiming myself, about protecting the spark that had grown into a flame. The pendant, the accident. Olivia's secrets, they were threads in a larger tapestry, one I was only beginning to see. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I knew one thing. I was done being the sacrificial lamb. The betrayal had broken something in me, but it had also forged something new, a strength that would carry me through the shadows toward a truth I was only beginning to glimpse. The day I drove away from my childhood home, my new car, a silver Subaru Forester, carried more than just my belongings. It carried the weight of my resolve, a heart hardened by betrayal, and a spark that had grown into a steady flame. 5 years had passed since Olivia stole Bluebell, totaled it in a drunken crash, and my father chose her over me. Those years were a blur of seasons of healing, of rediscovery, but they weren't just a montage of time. They were a crucible forging me into someone new, someone who understood her worth, who wielded her pain like a blade tempered by fire. Yet even as I built a life that was mine alone, the shadow of that silver pendant, its glowing symbols etched in my memory, lingered like a riddle I couldn't solve. It was a reminder that the story wasn't over, that the mystery of Olivia's actions held secrets I was only beginning to uncover. I left Seattle for Portland, a city of bridges and rain where the air felt charged with possibility. My interior design degree was my ticket out, and I landed an entry-level job at Horizon Interiors, a boutique firm that felt like a sanctuary of creativity. I started in the fabrics department, sorting swatches of silk and linen, learning the language of texture and color. My meticulous attention to detail, born from years of organizing my chaotic family life, caught the eye of the creative director. Within 2 years, I was managing my own client projects, transforming small spaces into havens that told stories of hope and resilience. My specialty became crafting rooms that felt alive, as if they held a pulse of their own, a magic I'd always sensed in the spaces I designed as a child. Clients would walk into a room I'd created and pause, their eyes softening, as if they'd stepped into a memory they hadn't known they'd lost. Financially, I clawed my way back from the wreckage of Bluebell. The loan I'd taken to cover the insurance deductible and a new car was a constant reminder of Olivia's betrayal, but I paid it off, dollar by dollar, shift by shift. At 27, I bought my first home, a one-bedroom condo in a converted industrial building. Its high ceilings and exposed brick a canvas for my dreams. The windows flooded the space with light, and I designed every corner with intention. A deep teal sectional for movie nights, a kitchen stocked with tools that made cooking a ritual, a workspace by the window, where my drafting table held sketches that felt like spells. This was my sanctuary, a fortress no one could breach, no one could steal. It was mine in a way Bluebell had been, but stronger, unyielding. My social circle grew, roots spreading in this new soil. Sophie, whom I met at a pottery class, became my anchor, a no-nonsense friend with curly hair and a laugh that cut through my defenses. She saw through my guarded exterior, calling me out when I tried to hide my pain, celebrating my victories like they were her own. Through her, I found a chosen family, a group of artists, writers, and dreamers who gathered for impromptu dinners, shared heartbreaks, and built traditions that felt more like home than my father's house ever had. We celebrated holidays with wine and laughter, our stories weaving a tapestry of belonging that filled the void left by my fractured family. 2 years ago, I met Jake at a charity auction for the Portland Arts Center. We both bid on a vintage record player, its wood grain whispering of forgotten songs. He won, but instead of walking away, he offered me his number, his smile warm and unassuming. Our relationship grew, slowly built on quiet moments, coffee dates, walks along the river, conversations that flowed like water. Jake was different from anyone I'd known. He listened when I spoke, respected my boundaries without needing them explained, and saw the strength I was only beginning to claim. With him, I felt safe, not because he shielded me, but because he trusted me to stand on my own. My relationship with my dad, though, was a wound that refused to heal completely. We spoke on holidays and birthdays, our conversations polite but distant like letters sent across an ocean. He and Vanessa stayed in Seattle, and I made excuses when they suggested visiting the memory of his betrayal too raw to bridge the gap. I could sense he felt the distance, but he never addressed the truth that Olivia's actions and his defense of them had shattered something fundamental between us. As for Olivia, I cut her out entirely. I unfriended her on social media, blocked her number, and tried to erase her from my life. But my dad's occasional updates painted a picture of her unchanged, dropping in and out of college, bouncing between jobs, leaning on him and Vanessa for support. Each story stirred a mix of vindication and sadness, proof that I'd been right about her, but also a reminder of the family we'd never be. The pendant, though, wouldn't let me forget. I'd kept the photograph from the insurance paperwork, the one showing its glowing symbols in Bluebell's wreckage. Late at night, when the condo was quiet, I'd study it, my fingers tracing the strange etchings. They weren't random. They formed a pattern, a language that felt just out of reach, like a dream you can't quite recall. Sometimes I'd wake with a start, the symbols dancing behind my eyes, as if they were trying to tell me something. I began to wonder if the pendant was more than a trinket, if it held a power that had driven Olivia's obsession with my car. Her reckless choices, her ability to sway my dad. The thought was absurd, but it clung to me, a seed of doubt that grew in the quiet moments. My healing wasn't just about career success or new relationships. I spent a year in therapy unraveling the tangled threads of family loyalty, betrayal, and self-worth. My therapist, a woman with kind eyes and a knack for asking questions that cut to the bone, helped me see that my dad's favoritism wasn't about me. It was about his own need to fix, to be needed. She taught me to set boundaries to recognize the patterns that had kept me tethered to his approval. I took up yoga and meditation, finding solace in the rhythm of my breath, the discipline of my morning practice. Each sunrise on my mat was a small victory, a reclaiming of the peace Olivia had stolen. I read books on family dynamics, journaled my thoughts, and tracked my growth like a map of a new world. The raw pain of that summer, the car, the betrayal, the pendant began to soften, not gone, but transformed like a scar that tells a story of survival. My daily routine became a ritual of empowerment. I'd wake at 6 flow through yoga poses as the city stirred, then run 3 miles along the river, the water's rush a mirror to my own resilience. Work kept me busy, my designs earning praise, my confidence growing with each project. Evenings were for cooking simple meals that felt like acts of creation, like the spaces I designed. Weekends brought farmers' markets, art exhibits, and road trips to the coast, where the ocean's roar seemed to echo the strength I was building inside. My Subaru, reliable and unassuming, carried me through this new life, but I no longer tied my identity to it. My independence wasn't in a car or a condo. It was in me, a flame that burned steady, unquenchable. Yet the pendant's mystery lingered a shadow at the edge of my new life. One evening, while sketching a client's living room, I found myself doodling the symbols from memory, their curves and angles flowing from my pencil, like a song I didn't know I knew. The act felt instinctive, almost guided, and when I finished the page, seemed to hum with a faint energy like the pendant in the wreckage. I tore it out, tucked it away, but the feeling stayed, a sense that I was connected to something larger, something that had been awakened by Olivia's betrayal. I began to notice small things, the way my designs seemed to resonate with clients on a deeper level, the way I could sense a room's history just by standing in it. Was it intuition or something more? I didn't know, but I felt it, a power stirring, waiting to be claimed. One night, as I walked home from a late client meeting, a strange incident deepened the mystery. A street lamp flickered as I passed its light, stuttering in a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. I stopped, my breath catching, and saw a glint in the gutter, a silver object, small and familiar. I knelt, my fingers trembling as I picked it up. It wasn't Olivia's pendant, but it was similar. Its symbols, different, but eerily akin, their edges warm to the touch. I slipped it into my pocket, my mind racing. Was this a coincidence or a sign? Had Olivia's pendant been part of something bigger, something that was now reaching for me? I didn't have answers, but I knew one thing. The betrayal that had broken me had also set me free. It had forced me to confront the truth about my family, about myself, and it had awakened a strength I hadn't known I possessed. The pendant, the symbols, the strange hum in my sketches, they were clues to a mystery I was only beginning to unravel. And as I stood in my condo, the city lights sparkling beyond my windows, I felt a certainty settle over me. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. And whatever secrets Olivia had left behind, I would face them on my terms with a power that was mine alone. 5 years had passed since I left Seattle, since the wreckage of Bluebell and the sting of my father's betrayal carved a line between my past and my future. I'd built a life in Portland, a sanctuary of my own design with a condo that hummed with my creative energy, a career that felt like casting spells through color and light, and a chosen family who saw me for who I was. The spark I'd nurtured through those dark days had grown into a steady flame, a power I was only beginning to understand. But the shadow of Olivia's pendant, its glowing symbols etched in my memory, never fully faded. The silver object I'd found in the gutter, a near twin to her pendant, sat in a locked drawer, its warmth pulsing faintly whenever I dared to touch it. I told myself I'd moved on, that the mystery was a ghost I'd buried. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday morning in May, my phone rang, and the past came roaring back like a storm breaking over a quiet sea. I was at my drafting table sketching fabric patterns for a new client project when the call came. An unknown number flashed on the screen, and I nearly let it go to voicemail, assuming it was a telemarketer. But something a prickle at the nape of my neck, like the air before a lightning strike, made me answer. Hello? A pause, heavy with static, then a voice I hadn't heard in half a decade. Elena, it's Olivia. Her words hit like a jolt, sharp and electric, shattering the calm I'd so carefully built. Her voice was the same, that slight rasp I remembered, but it carried a weariness, a crack in the confidence she'd once wielded like a weapon. My grip tightened on the phone, my heart pounding as if it recognized the danger before my mind did. Elena, are you there? She asked, a nervous laugh, threading through her words. I'm here, I said, my voice steady, professional, the way I'd speak to a difficult client. This is unexpected. Yeah, I know. It's been a while. Another laugh, brittle and forced. How are you? I'm doing well, I said, offering nothing more. The pendant flashed in my mind, its symbols pulsing, and I wondered if she still wore it, if it was tied to this call. What do you need? Olivia. A beat of silence, then a sigh. Wow, straight to the point. You haven't changed. I bit back a retort, the memory of her smirk at the police station still sharp. I'm at work, so yes, I'm getting to the point. Right. Sorry. She cleared her throat, her voice dropping. I was wondering how you've been. I heard from Dad you're doing really well. Senior designer now, right? And you bought your own place. The fact that she knew these details, my career, my condo, felt like another violation, as if my dad had been feeding her pieces of my life while I'd kept hers locked out. Olivia, I doubt you called after 5 years, just to catch up on my career highlights. She sighed again, heavier this time. You're right. I need a favor. And I know I have no right to ask, but I'm desperate. There it was, the real reason laid bare like a trap waiting to spring. I need a place to stay, just temporarily. I lost my job at the restaurant 2 months ago, and I'm behind on rent. My landlord's giving me until the end of the week to move out. I've tried everything, Elena. Dad and Vanessa say they can't help this time, something about teaching me responsibility. The bitterness in her voice was unmistakable, but it was the word desperate that caught me. Was it genuine or another performance? I sat down at my desk, my fingers brushing the locked drawer where the silver object lay. And you thought of me, I said, unable to keep the incredulity from my voice. You're doing so well, she said, a pleading note creeping in. You have that nice condo. I wouldn't be in your way, I promise, just until I get back on my feet. A month, 2, at most. I closed my eyes, the memory of Bluebell's wreckage flooding back the crushed metal, the shattered windshield, the pendant glowing in the debris. After everything she'd done, she expected me to open my home, my sanctuary, to her. I've changed, Elena, she continued when I didn't respond. I'm not the same person I was back then. I know I messed up with your car. I was young and stupid. You were 19, I said, my voice flat. Old enough to know stealing is wrong. Old enough to know drinking and driving is dangerous. I know, and I'm sorry, she said quickly. I should have said it years ago. I'm saying it now. I'm sorry for what I did. I'll contribute to expenses. I have some savings, not much, but enough for groceries, utilities, while I look for a job. Her apology 5 years too late felt hollow, like a script she'd rehearsed, but didn't believe. The promise of financial help rang false given her history of leaning on others. I thought of the silver object in my drawer, its warmth, its symbols so like hers. Was this call just about a place to stay? Or was there something more, something tied to the pendant, to the mystery I'd never solved? I need to think about this, I said finally. This isn't a decision I can make on a phone call out of the blue. How long do you need? She asked, urgency creeping into her tone. I have to be out by Friday. I'll call you tomorrow. I said, refusing to commit. The pendant's image burned in my mind, and I wondered if she'd called me because I was her last resort, or because of something else, something connected to those glowing symbols. Okay, she said, her voice tinged with disappointment. Thank you for considering it, Elena. I really appreciate it. I hung up staring at my phone as if it might reveal her true intentions. The emotions I'd thought I'd buried, anger, hurt, betrayal, surged back raw and sharp. But there was something else, a whisper of intuition telling me this wasn't just about Olivia's desperation. The pendant, the silver object, the strange pulse in my sketches, they were connected, and her call felt like the first thread of a larger tapestry unraveling. Before I could process further, my phone rang again. This time it was my dad. Elena, he said, skipping any greeting, Olivia told me she called you. Hello to you too, Dad, I said dryly. My guard already up. She needs help, Elena. She's really trying to turn things around this time. The phrase, this time, told me there'd been other times, other promises she'd broken. Why can't she stay with you and Vanessa? I asked. You have a big house, plenty of room. He sighed, a heavy sound I knew too well. We've tried that before. It doesn't work. She needs to learn independence, and living with us again would be a step backward. So your solution is to send her to live with me, I said. My voice sharp. Someone she hasn't spoken to in 5 years. Someone whose car she stole and totaled. That was a long time ago, he said, his tone dismissive as if my pain were a footnote. You need to let that go, Elena. Family is family. We help each other when we're down. The hypocrisy was a slap, reigniting the flame inside me. Where was that philosophy when I was down a car and $1,000, I asked? When I had to take out a loan and work extra shifts because of her? She doesn't have much time. He pressed, ignoring my question, and she has nowhere else to go. I'll think about it, I said, my voice firm, unyielding. Goodbye, Dad. I ended the call. My heart racing the air in my condo, suddenly heavy. I unlocked the drawer and pulled out the silver object, its warmth spreading through my fingers like a heartbeat. The symbols seemed to shift under my gaze, their curves sharper, more defined. I thought of Olivia's pendant glowing in Bluebell's wreckage, and a chill ran through me. Was her call a coincidence, or had something drawn her back to me, something tied to these objects, to the mystery I'd tried to leave behind? That night, I couldn't sleep, my mind a storm of memories and questions. I sat at my drafting table, the silver object beside me, and began to sketch. My pencil moved almost on its own, tracing the symbols from memory, their shapes flowing like a river. As I drew, the air seemed to hum a faint vibration that matched the pulse of the object. The lines on the page glowed faintly just for a moment, and I gasped, dropping my pencil. Was this my imagination, or was the power I'd sensed, the spark, the flame connected to these symbols to Olivia? To the accident, I knew then that I was at a crossroads. Olivia's request wasn't just about a place to stay. It was a test, a challenge to the boundaries I'd fought so hard to build. The Elena of 5 years ago might have caved, might have let family obligation override her instincts, but I wasn't that Elena anymore. The flame inside me burned brighter, fueled by the betrayal, the mystery, the strange power I was beginning to feel. I needed answers about Olivia, about the pendant, about the object in my hand. and I needed to protect the life I'd built, the sanctuary I'd created. I texted Olivia, my fingers steady despite the storm in my chest. Let's meet for coffee tomorrow at 4:00 p.m., River City Cafe on Main Street. We can discuss your request in person. Her response came instantly. Thank you, Elena. I'll be there. You won't regret this. I wasn't so sure. The pendant, the symbols, the pulse in the air, they were warnings, signs of a truth I was only beginning to glimpse. But I was ready to face it, not as the girl who'd lost everything, but as the woman who'd found her strength. The River City Cafe on Main Street was a haven of warm light and the rich aroma of roasted coffee, its brick walls lined with local art that felt like whispers of Portland's soul. I arrived early, choosing a corner booth with a clear view of the door, my sketchbook open in front of me as a shield. The silver object from the gutter lay in my bag, its faint warmth a constant reminder of the mystery that had haunted me for years. Olivia's call yesterday had stirred the embers of a past I'd tried to bury: the stolen car, the betrayal, the glowing pendant in Bluebell's wreckage. But it had also awakened something deeper, a power within me, a flame that burned brighter with every challenge I faced. I wasn't the same Elena who'd stood silent in the police station 5 years ago, wounded by my father's indifference. I was stronger now, forged in resilience, and I was here to face Olivia not out of obligation, but to uncover the truth behind her return and protect the life I'd built. I'd prepared for this moment like a general before a battle. Last night, I'd called Sophie my voice of reason and poured out the chaos of Olivia's request. She's got some nerve, Sophie had said, her tone sharp but steady. You owe her nothing, Elena. Trust your gut. If you meet her, do it on your terms and don't let her guilt trip you. Jake Ever Calm had echoed her advice, his hand warm on mine as he reminded me. You've built something incredible. Don't let her take it from you. Their words grounded me, but it was my own intuition, a pulse as real as the silver object's warmth, that drove me to dig deeper. I'd spent hours scouring Olivia's social media unblocked for the first time in years. Her Instagram was a curated lie. Recent posts showed her in designer dresses, sipping cocktails at rooftop bars, her smile as calculated as ever. There were no signs of desperation, no eviction notices, no pleas for help, just a glossy facade of a life she couldn't possibly afford without a job. The inconsistency gnawed at me, and when I scrolled further, I found a photo from a month ago, Olivia at a party. Her pendant glinting around her neck, its symbols catching the light in a way that made my heart skip. The caption read, "Chasing the spark." Was it a coincidence or a clue? The word spark echoed my own inner fire, and I couldn't shake the feeling that her return was tied to the mystery I'd been unraveling: the pendant, the silver object, the glowing symbols in my sketches. As 4:00 p.m. approached, I sketched absent-mindedly, my pencil tracing the symbols from memory. The lines flowed effortlessly, their curves almost alive, and for a moment the page seemed to shimmer, a faint glow pulsing from the ink. I blinked, my breath catching. It wasn't my imagination, the sketch was alive, its energy mirroring the warmth of the silver object in my bag. I closed the sketchbook quickly, my pulse racing. Was this power mine awakened by the betrayal, or something tied to Olivia's pendant? The question lingered as the cafe door swung open. And there she was. Olivia stepped inside, her presence as commanding as I remembered, but different, sharper, more worn. Her blonde hair was pulled into a messy bun, her designer jeans and silk blouse out of place for someone claiming destitution. She scanned the room, her green eyes locking onto mine, and for a split second, I saw something flicker in her gaze, fear perhaps, or recognition. She wore no pendant today, its absence a void that felt deliberate, like a chess move I didn't yet understand. She slid into the booth across from me, ordering a lavender latte with a casual wave, as if we were old friends catching up, not estranged sisters meeting after a betrayal. "Elena," she said, her smile practiced but strained. "You look amazing. Portland's been good to you." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "Thanks. You look like you're doing all right yourself despite the eviction story." Her smile faltered, but she recovered quickly, laughing softly. Trying to keep up appearances, social media's all smoke and mirrors. She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "I meant what I said on the phone. I'm in trouble, and I need a place to crash. Just for a bit." I studied her, searching for the truth behind her words. Her nails were manicured, her bag, a sleek leather number that screamed money. "You said you lost your job and got evicted. Yet your Instagram shows you at fancy bars wearing clothes that cost more than my monthly rent. What's the real story, Olivia?" She flinched, her fingers twitching as if reaching for the absent pendant. "I had some savings," she said, her tone defensive. "I spent them stupidly. Okay, I'm trying to get my life together now. That's why I called you." I leaned back, my hands resting on my sketchbook, the silver object's warmth pulsing faintly through my bag. "Let's talk about the past first. You stole my car, Olivia. You drove drunk, totaled it, hurt people. You never apologized until yesterday, and even then it felt like a script. Why should I trust you now?" Her eyes darkened, a flash of the old defiance surfacing. I said, "I was sorry, Elena. I was 19, drunk, and desperate to impress some stupid friends. I made a mistake. Can't you move on?" "Move on," I repeated, my voice low, but steadied, the flame inside me flaring. "That car was my independence paid for with my own money. You took it, and Dad took your side, leaving me to clean up the mess. I had to take out alone work, extra shifts, all because of your mistake. And now you want to move into my home like nothing happened." She looked away, her jaw tight. "I know I messed up, but I've changed. I'm not that person anymore. I need a fresh start, and you're the only one who can help me." Her words were a mirror to my dad's, the same plea for family, for forgiveness. But there was something off, a tremor in her voice, a glance toward my bag, as if she sensed the silver object inside. I decided to test her. "What happened to your pendant?" I asked, my tone casual, but my eyes sharp. "The one with the weird symbols. You used to wear it all the time." Her reaction was instantaneous, a sharp intake of breath, her hand flying to her neck where the pendant should have been. I lost it," she said, her voice too quick, too practiced. "It was just a cheap trinket, nothing special." "Then why was it in my car's wreckage?" I pressed, watching her closely. "I saw it, Olivia, caught in the driver's side door, glowing like it was alive." "Care to explain that?" Her face paled, her eyes darting to the table, as if searching for an escape. "You're imagining things," she said, but her voice cracked, betraying her. "It was probably just some debris. You were upset seeing things that weren't there." I leaned forward, my voice calm but unyielding, the flame inside me a steady blaze. I kept the photo from the insurance paperwork. It's clear as day, the pendant, the symbols glowing in the wreckage. And then there's this. I reached into my bag, pulling out the silver object from the gutter, its warmth pulsing against my palm. I held it up, the symbols catching the cafe's light, and her eyes widened, a flicker of panic breaking through her facade. "Where did you get that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Found it," I said, keeping my tone even. "It's not yours, but it's close. Same kind of symbols, same strange warmth. What are they, Olivia? And why are you really here?" For a moment she was silent, her hands trembling as she clutched her latte. Then she laughed, a brittle sound that didn't reach her eyes. "You're obsessed with that old thing, aren't you?" "It's nothing, Elena, just jewelry. And I'm here because I'm broke and need a place to stay. Stop looking for conspiracies." But I saw the fear in her eyes, the way her fingers twitched, as if itching to snatch the object from me. She was lying, and the truth was tied to the pendant, to the symbols, to the mystery that had haunted me for years. My intuition, that spark turned flame, burned brighter, urging me to trust it. I slipped the object back into my bag, my decision crystallizing. "I'm not letting you stay with me," I said, my voice firm, unapologetic. "I've built a life here, Olivia, one you don't get to disrupt. You violated my trust once, and I won't risk it again. But I'm not heartless. I'll pay for a week at a budget hotel nearby, and I can put in a word at Horizon Cafe. They're hiring baristas. That's my offer. Take it or leave it." Her face twisted a mix of anger and desperation. "You're really going to turn me away, after everything I've been through?" "Everything you've been through," I echoed, my voice sharp. "You caused the accident, Olivia. You hurt people, cost me thousands, and never took responsibility. You don't get to play the victim here." She stared at me, her mask slipping, revealing the same defiance I'd seen at the police station. "Fine," she said, finally, her voice cold. "I'll take the hotel and the job lead. But don't think this makes you better than me." "I don't need to be better than you," I said, standing to leave my bag, heavy with the silver object's warmth. "I just need to be true to myself." As I walked out of the cafe, the air felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. The symbols, the pendant, Olivia's lies. They were pieces of a puzzle, and I was closer to solving it than ever before. The flame inside me burned steady, a power I was beginning to understand, a strength that had grown from betrayal into something unbreakable. I didn't know what Olivia was hiding, but I knew one thing: I was ready to face it, not as a victim, but as a force of my own. The air outside River City Cafe was crisp, carrying the scent of rain and the distant hum of Portland's evening bustle. I walked away from my meeting with Olivia, my bag heavy with the silver object's warmth, my heart lighter, but not unburdened. The confrontation had been a crucible, testing the flame of my resolve, and I'd emerged stronger, my boundaries intact. I'd refused to let Olivia into my home, my sanctuary, but offered her a lifeline, a week at a budget hotel, and a job lead at Horizon Cafe. It was a gesture of compassion, not weakness, a balance I'd learned through years of healing. Yet the mystery lingered like a shadow, the pendant, the silver object, the glowing symbols in my sketches. They were threads in a tapestry I was only beginning to unravel, and Olivia's reaction, her panic at seeing the silver object, confirmed that her return was more than a plea for help. Something deeper was at play, and I was determined to uncover it. The next morning, I called my dad. I needed to address his pressure, his expectation that I'd take Olivia in, and I wanted to set the record straight before he could twist the narrative. The phone rang longer than usual, each tone amplifying the tension in my chest. When he finally answered, his voice was heavy, as if he'd been expecting the call. "Elena," he said, "Olivia told me you met with her." "Yes." I said, my tone steady, the flame inside me burning bright. "I told her she can't stay with me. I offered to pay for a week at a hotel and put in a word at Horizon Cafe for a job. That's all I'm willing to do." There was a pause, long and heavy, the kind that carries years of unspoken truths. "You're turning her away?" he asked, his voice tinged with disappointment. "She's your sister, Elena. She's trying to change." "Stepsister." I corrected, the word sharp, but necessary. "And she hasn't changed Dad. Her Instagram shows her living a life she can't afford. And when I asked about the past, about my car, the accident, she deflected, blamed me just like before. I'm not letting her disrupt the life I've built." He sighed, a sound I knew too well, but this time there was something new, a crack in his usual defensiveness. "I know you're still angry about the car," he said, his voice softer. And maybe Vanessa and I were too quick to defend her back then. We thought we were helping her, giving her a chance to grow. But I see now that we might have been too soft, enabled her too much. The admission caught me off guard, a flicker of light in the darkness of our fractured bond. It wasn't an apology, not quite, but it was the closest he'd ever come to acknowledging his role in my pain. I swallowed my throat tight. "You chose her over me, Dad." I said, my voice steady, but raw. "You asked me to be the bigger person to forgive, while I was the one paying for her mistakes. That hurt more than losing Bluebell." "I know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't see it then. I was trying to hold the family together, but I see now I failed you in the process. "I'm sorry, Elena." The words hit like a wave, unexpected and overwhelming. For years, I'd carried the weight of his silence, his favoritism, and now here was a crack in the wall, a small, fragile bridge. I didn't trust it fully, but it was a start. "Thank you for saying that," I said, my voice softer now. "But I need you to understand why I can't let her in. My home is my sanctuary, and I've worked too hard to protect it." "I get it," he said, and for the first time in years, I believed him. "I just want you both to be okay." "I am okay," I said, the flame inside me steady, unyielding. "And I hope Olivia will be too, but she needs to take responsibility for herself." We ended the call on a tentative note, not fully reconciled, but closer than we'd been in years. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a step toward understanding a seed planted in the ruins of our past. I sat at my drafting table, staring at the sketch I'd drawn during the meeting with Olivia, the symbols glowing faintly under the lamplight. The silver object, locked in its drawer, seemed to hum in response its warmth, a quiet pulse in the room. My intuition, that spark-turned flame, told me the mystery wasn't over, that the pendant, the symbols, and Olivia's return were connected to a truth I was only beginning to glimpse. A week later, I got a text from Olivia Short, and to the point, got the job at Horizon Cafe. Found a cheap studio. Thanks for the push. I needed it. I stared at the message, searching for sincerity in the words. It was the closest she'd come to acknowledging her responsibility, a small crack in her armor of defiance. I didn't reply, but I felt a quiet satisfaction, not because I'd helped her, but because I'd stood my ground, proving to myself that I could be compassionate without sacrificing my boundaries. At Horizon Interiors, my career continued to soar. I took on a high-profile project, a boutique hotel in the Pearl District, pouring my heart into spaces that felt alive, their walls humming with the same energy I'd sensed in my sketches. Clients remarked on it, calling my designs magical, as if they could feel the pulse of something beyond the ordinary. I began to wonder if the symbols, the silver object, my intuition, were they part of a power I was only beginning to understand. Late at night, I'd sketch the symbols, their lines flowing like a language I was learning to speak. Each stroke felt like a step closer to the truth, a connection to something ancient, something tied to the pendant and the mystery of Olivia's actions. Jake and Sophie remained my anchors, their presence a reminder that family wasn't just blood, it was choice, trust, love. We spent evenings at my condo cooking together, laughing over shared stories, the warmth of their company, a balm to the lingering wounds of my past. Jake especially seemed to sense the shift in me, the growing power, the questions I couldn't yet voice. One night, as we sat on my teal sectional, a record spinning softly in the background, he took my hand and said, "Whatever you're chasing, Elena, you're not alone. You're stronger than you know." His words echoed the flame inside me, a flame that had grown from a spark in the wreckage of betrayal into a fire that lit my path. The silver object, the pendant, the glowing symbols, they were still a mystery, but I was no longer afraid of them. They were part of my story, a puzzle I was destined to solve. And as I looked out my condo's windows, the city lights sparkling like stars. I felt a certainty settle over me. I was not just surviving, but thriving, and no shadow from my past could dim the light I'd claimed. The relationship with my dad remained a work in progress. We spoke more often, our conversations less strained, though the trust we'd lost would take time to rebuild. Olivia, now working at Horizon Cafe, seemed to be finding her footing, but I kept my distance, my boundaries firm. The pendant's mystery lingered a question mark in the shape of glowing symbols, but I was ready to face it, not as the girl who'd lost everything, but as the woman who'd built something stronger, something unbreakable. The rain fell softly outside my Portland condo, a gentle patter against the windows that felt like a lullaby for the city. I sat at my drafting table, my sketchbook open, the silver object from the gutter resting beside it, its warmth a quiet pulse in the stillness of the evening. The symbols I'd drawn, those strange flowing lines that echoed Olivia's pendant, seemed to shimmer faintly under the lamplight, a whisper of the mystery that had woven itself into my life. It had been a month since my confrontation with Olivia at River City Cafe, since I'd stood my ground and offered her a lifeline without sacrificing my sanctuary. That moment, like the wreckage of Bluebell 5 years ago, had been a turning point, a testament to the flame inside me, a flame that had grown from a spark of pain into a fire of unyielding strength. As I looked back on my journey, I realized the betrayal that had once broken me had also set me free, and the mystery that lingered was no longer a threat, but a part of the magic I was learning to wield. The confrontation with Olivia had been a crucible forging clarity from chaos. By refusing to let her into my home, I'd protected the life I'd built my condo, my career at Horizon Interiors, my chosen family of Sophie and Jake. But offering her a week at a hotel and a job lead at Horizon Cafe wasn't weakness. It was power, the kind that comes from knowing your worth and choosing compassion on your own terms. Her text, thanking me for the push and confirming her new job and studio apartment, was a small victory, not because I'd fixed her, but because I'd held my boundaries while giving her a chance to stand on her own. I didn't know if she'd truly changed, and I didn't need to. My peace no longer depended on her redemption. My relationship with my dad had shifted too, like a river finding a new course. His admission of fault, acknowledging that he and Vanessa had enabled Olivia, was a crack in the wall between us, a fragile bridge we were slowly rebuilding. Our calls were more frequent now, less guarded, though the trust we'd lost would take time to mend. Last week, he'd sent me a photo of him and Vanessa at a community theater, play their smiles warm, but tinged with a sadness I recognized. "We're proud of you, Elena," he'd written, and for the first time in years, I believed him. It wasn't a full healing, but it was a start, a seed planted in the ashes of our past. The mystery of the pendant and the silver object remained a riddle that pulsed at the edges of my life. I'd stopped seeing it as a threat and started seeing it as a gift, a connection to something larger, something that had awakened the power within me, the symbols in my sketches, the hum in my designs, the way my clients felt a magic in the spaces I created. They were all part of it. I'd begun researching the symbols, scouring old books on mythology and arcane lore at a used bookstore near the river. Some resembled ancient runes, others sigils from forgotten traditions, but none matched exactly. Yet each time I drew them, my intuition sharpened as if I were learning a language my soul already knew. The silver object locked in its drawer seemed to respond, its warmth growing stronger when I sketched, as if encouraging me to keep searching. One evening, as I walked home from a client meeting, the street lamps flickered again, their rhythm syncing with my heartbeat, just as they had the night I found the silver object. I paused, my breath catching, and felt a surge of energy, not fear, but certainty. The flame inside me, the power I'd discovered through betrayal and resilience, was real. It wasn't just intuition. It was a gift. a spark of something ancient, perhaps tied to the symbols, to the pendant, to the mystery that had shadowed my life. I didn't have all the answers, but I no longer needed them to feel whole. The mystery was a journey, not a destination, and I was ready to walk it with courage. My life in Portland continued to bloom. At Horizon Interiors, the boutique hotel project earned me a promotion to lead designer, a role that felt like a coronation of my creativity. My condo remained my sanctuary, its walls alive with the energy of my designs, its windows framing a city that had become my home. Sophie and Jake were constants, their laughter and love, a reminder that family was what I chose, not what I was born into. Jake especially seemed to sense the power growing in me. One night, as we sat on my rooftop, the stars bright above us, he took my hand and said, "You're like one of your designs. Elena, beautiful, strong, and a little magical. Whatever you're becoming, I'm here for it." His words settled over me like a warm blanket, and I smiled, feeling the flame inside me burn steady and bright. The betrayal, Olivia's theft. My dad's silence had been a storm, but I'd weathered it, emerging not just whole, but radiant. The pendant, the silver object, the glowing symbols, they were part of my story, but they didn't define it. I did. I'd learned that saying no could be an act of love, not just for others, but for myself. I'd learned that forgiveness didn't mean erasing the past, but choosing to carry it lightly, like a scar that tells a story of survival. And I'd learned that strength wasn't about never breaking, but about rebuilding piece by piece into something stronger. As I sat at my drafting table, the rain a soft symphony outside, I opened my sketchbook to a new page. I didn't draw the symbols this time. Instead, I sketched a room, a space filled with light, with textures that felt like home, with a warmth that echoed the flame inside me. It was a design for no client but myself, a vision of the life I'd created, and the woman I'd become. The silver object pulsed faintly beside me, a reminder of the mystery that still lingered, but I wasn't afraid. It was a thread in my tapestry, a story I'd unravel in my own time. I thought of you, whoever's listening to this story, and I wondered, what boundaries have you set to protect your light? What betrayals have shaped you, and how have you risen from them? We all carry scars, mysteries, sparks waiting to ignite. The question is, what will you do with yours? For me, the answer was clear. I'd keep creating, keep growing, keep chasing the truth, not because I needed to solve it, but because it was part of the magic of being alive. The rain slowed to a drizzle, the city lights sparkling through my windows, like a promise. I closed my sketchbook, the silver object warm in my hand, and felt a peace settle over me, a peace hard-won, radiant, and mine. The storm was over, and I was home.